Hey, welcome to The Explainer. If you could peel back the history of Britain, kind of like layers of Earth, what do you think you'd find? Well, today we're going to do just that. We're digging through thousands of years of invasions, of settlements, to see how every single new group, from Roman legionaries all the way to Viking raiders, left their own mark, their own layer, that built the nation we know today. All right, so here's the plan. We're starting way back with those mysterious Stone Age monuments. Then we'll jump forward to the Roman legions marching in, followed by the rise of the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms, and of course the age of the Vikings. And we'll cap it all off with that big one, 1066, the last invasion, before we pull it all together and see how these layers created modern Britain. Let's get into it. Okay, so to really get this story started, we have to go back, way back. Back to a time when Britain wasn't even an island. Seriously. Thousands of years ago, there was a physical land bridge connecting it to Europe, and the very first humans, they just walked right across. So you can really think of this whole prehistoric period as this incredibly fast evolution. I mean, it kicks off with Stone Age hunter-gatherers, right? But the real game changer was farming, which showed up about 6,000 years ago. That one shift led straight into the Bronze Age. People start working with metal, and it completely transforms society. And then from there, you get the Iron Age, where you have these Celtic-speaking tribes building massive defended hill forts and, get this, even minting their own coins. And what's so cool is that these ancient people left behind stuff we can literally still go and see today. I mean, while nature was busy carving out the English Channel about 10,000 years ago, turning Britain into an island, people were building their own landmarks. You've got the mystery of Stonehenge, right? The incredibly preserved village of Skara Brae. And then there's the absolutely massive Iron Age fort at Maiden Castle. These places are still there. All right, so you've got this island of tribes, right? But their whole world was about to get turned upside down. Why? Because a Mediterranean superpower was starting to look north. And the arrival of the Roman Empire, well, it was going to change absolutely everything. But here's the thing. It wasn't some easy one-and-done conquest. Not at all. Julius Caesar himself gave it a shot way back in 55 BC, and he failed. It took almost another 100 years before Emperor Claudius finally launched a successful invasion in AD 43. That's when most of Britain finally came under Roman rule, and it was a massive turning point. And you can bet that Roman control was not accepted quietly. Oh, no. The resistance was fierce, and it was led by incredible figures like Queen Boudica of the Iceni tribe. Her rebellion was such a huge deal that she's literally immortalized in a statue today, right there on Westminster Bridge in London, a permanent reminder of that fight. So how long did this whole Roman era actually last? Get this, around 400 years. To put that into perspective for you, that's almost twice as long as the United States has even existed. So yeah, that's more than enough time to completely and permanently change the fabric of the island. And their legacy, it was tangible. You can still see it. The Romans left behind this incredible network of roads, and a lot of their routes are still used today. They brought a new legal system, new plants and animals, and even the very first Christian communities. And of course, up in the north, they built Hadrian's Wall, that huge stone barrier that basically screamed, "This is the edge of the Roman Empire." But empires don't last forever, right? When the Roman legions packed up and left in AD 410, they had to go defend other parts of their crumbling empire. They left a massive power vacuum. Suddenly, Britain was vulnerable. And that vacuum acted like a magnet for new groups from Northern Europe, who started sailing across the sea to fill it. And these newcomers, we call them the Anglo-Saxons. They came from areas that are now Germany and Denmark. You know, the Jutes, the Angles, and the Saxons. And here's the key. They didn't just conquer. They settled down. And their single most important legacy? Well, their languages all mashed together to form Old English, which is the direct ancestor of the very language I'm speaking and you're hearing right now. And don't think for a second that these guys were just crude warriors. We know they weren't, thanks to some mind-blowing archaeological finds. I mean, look at the Sutton Hoo ship burial. They buried a powerful king with all his treasures inside a full-size ship. That one find alone shows us they had a really sophisticated culture full of rich traditions and incredible craftsmanship. So, as all these new Anglo-Saxon kingdoms are forming, that seed of Christianity that the Romans planted, it starts to grow and it spreads fast. And this was really driven by some super influential missionaries. You had St. Patrick over in Ireland. Up north, St. Columba founded this amazing monastery on the island of Iona. And then down south, you had St. Augustine, who was sent from Rome and ended up establishing the heart of English Christianity at Canterbury. Okay, so the Anglo-Saxon kingdoms are starting to really flourish. Things are looking up, but then a new threat appears on the horizon. Long ships start showing up from across the North Sea. They're carrying warriors who would start out as absolutely terrifying raiders, but who would eventually end up as settlers and even neighbors. Yeah, the whole Viking relationship with Britain went through this dramatic evolution. It starts in AD 789, and at first, they're just violent raiders from Denmark and Norway. They're hitting monasteries, sacking towns, grabbing treasure and slaves. But over time, that changes. They start to stay. They set up farms, build communities, and actually start integrating with the local Anglo-Saxons. And they left a permanent mark, a literal mark on the map. A huge chunk of eastern and northern England became known as the Danelaw. This was an area where Viking laws and customs were the rule. And you can still see that legacy today. Ever notice place names that end in by or thorpe, like Grimsby or Scunthorpe? Yep, that's a Viking leftover. Now here's the ironic part. This constant threat from the outside, it actually had a huge effect on the inside. It basically forced all these scattered, fragmented Anglo-Saxon kingdoms to finally unite. Under the leadership of one guy, King Alfred the Great of Wessex, they all rallied together to push back the Vikings and save their culture. So all of this, it all leads us to one single year. A date that is probably the most famous in all of British history. 1066, the year of the last successful invasion, an event that would change the course of the island forever. That's right, 1066. This is the year William, the Duke of Normandy over in France, sails across the English Channel and defeats the Anglo-Saxon king Harold at the Battle of Hastings. This one single event, which is so famously stitched into the biotapestry, completely upends everything. It installs a new French-speaking aristocracy and just fundamentally changes English society. But the Normans, they weren't just soldiers. They were incredible, meticulous administrators. To get a handle on his new kingdom, William the Conqueror ordered this thing called the Doomsday Book. And it was this unbelievably detailed survey of every single piece of land, every person, every farm animal in England. It was data collection and government control on a scale nobody had ever seen before. Okay, so let's take a step back and look at the big picture here. After all these thousands of years of people arriving, conquering, and mixing together, what did each of these groups actually leave behind for the Britain we see today? Well, it turns out each group left its own distinct and permanent layer. You've got the Romans, who left roads, law, and Christianity. The Anglo-Saxons, they gave Britain the very foundation of the English language. The Vikings came along and shaped place names and trade. And then the Normans topped it all off with a whole new system of government and a massive injection of French words into English. And when you think about it, it's just this powerful reminder that a nation's identity, it's almost never static. It's not something that was just created in one single moment. Instead, it's more like a living, breathing story of continuous change, shaped by all the countless people who arrived, who settled, and who added their own chapter to the narrative.